In today's episode of Joe Knows Retirement, we're breaking down the 5 Roth conversion mistakes that we see over and over again from people who look to work with us or people who are DIY in their retirement plan. And our hope for this video is to ensure that you are better educated as you make these decisions. And what's going to be great about this video is some things that I tell you, others may not be telling you. Maybe your CPA is not telling you to do Roth conversions. Maybe you're thinking, I don't think now's the time to do Roth conversion. Maybe I miss the opportunity to do Roth conversions. All the limiting beliefs that we see very often, we're going to break down here and show you the real math and data behind to see, hey, does this make sense to do or not? But understand, if you have a pension, if you have $1 million or more saved, your situation is going to be more unique. Taxes are likely going to be the biggest expense in your retirement, as most people we see have all of their retirement savings in tax-deferred vehicles. So they've got a high income, they've got a high net worth, which they're going to be required to take withdrawals out eventually due to required minimum distributions at either age 73 or 75. And so this can cause what some experts will suggest a retirement tax time bomb during their retirement. And so if you can be proactive, if you can get ahead of it, if you can understand these 5 things, I think you'll be better prepared and more confident to make this decision whether you should Roth convert or whether you shouldn't, but also how much should you Roth convert and when is it too much or too little. So we're going to break down all of that on today's episode. So let's get rolling.
Joe knows taxes.
Joe knows the market.
Joe knows Social Security.
Joe knows income planning.
Joe knows pickleball? No.
This is Joe Knows Retirement.
One of the biggest reasons people come work with us from this YouTube channel or from all of the books that I've written, primarily the book called I Hate Taxes, which has to do a lot with Roth conversion planning and tax strategy in retirement. So a lot of people will read that book or watch our content or see us on TV or read our Kiplingers, which is heavy in tax planning as well. And they'll come to us and say, hey, I haven't thought about this way, or maybe my advisor said this over all these years, and now you're telling me this, is this what I need to do? And so we're going to break down this concept, but also encourage you that make sure you're doing tax planning for your retirement. As I mentioned, this is very important for someone in your situation, right? That 2% club, which I'm writing a book about, is so important to this crowd to do tax smart planning, but also when it comes to Roth conversion planning, doing it the right way and not leaving any money on the table. Because I'll always tell you, I'll pay my fair share of taxes, but I don't want to tip Uncle Sam. The tax code's written in pencil. We don't know what tax rates will do, so we have to start taking more control now, being more flexible in the future by implementing strategies today, and being proactive is ultimately what we're encouraging people to do in this situation. And also understand Roth conversions are not for everyone. This is something that if you have $500,000 without a pension, you probably don't need to do Roth conversions. You'll live in the standard deduction moving forward, and you will not have to worry about paying taxes throughout your retirement is what we typically see. So it's going to be different for who you are and where you're at. And that's also going to determine how much you should Roth convert. Understand this is not a cookie cutter video here today. This isn't saying, here's the 3 steps you need to do that everyone watching this should be doing. No, because it's going to depend on your situation. What's your income, what's your investments, all of those are going to play a part. For example, if you have 10 million in your IRA versus if you have 1 million in your IRA, that's going to change the strategy and how much you look to convert, but also how aggressively you look to do it as well. And so those are all going to be considerations. I will tell you though, the majority of our clients who have a pension, have $1 million or more saved, we are doing Roth conversions for most of our clients. Not everyone, but probably 80 to 90% of our clients are doing something. And they may be small amounts, they may be larger amounts, and you can maybe get a better feel of what would be the right one for you here today after you watch the video. So let me break down the number one point that we see often from this crowd that we work with, the 2% crowd, and that is not maximizing the 24% bracket is one of the mistakes that they make. Now, again, not everyone should do this, but you got to think of the numbers. If your pension is a moderate pension or larger, let's say you have 40 or 50,000 or more, or even 6-figure pension, that's going to come close to bumping you out of the lower brackets pretty quickly. And so you're going to force yourself likely to always be in that 22 to 24% bracket scenario moving forward. And so if you're going to be in the 22% within retirement, it doesn't make sense to go up to the 24%. those are the numbers that you have to run. But you have to understand that you may not be necessarily in the all-in 22% tax bracket throughout your retirement. We have to be aware of Medicare premiums that start getting calculated at 63. So you could be in the 22% bracket, but you could cause forced Medicare premium tiers to increase your premium for Medicare, which means that your all-in tax rate is not 22, it may be 23 or 24% just due to that consideration. Or what about forcing your Social Security now to become taxable when you take that in the future, or causing your capital gains to be taxable from forcing out of the 0% capital gains bracket to the 15%. So my whole point here is that not to just always go to the top of the 24% bracket when doing a conversion, but do a calculation. Do a calculation not only for this year, but run projections moving forward. Something we do with all of our clients is we always run projections moving forward, not just a one-year decision. What is this going to cause our situation to do moving forward? Because in the future, if we're going to expect to be in the 12% bracket for all of our retirement, we don't need to do as aggressive Roth conversions if that's the case, so that we can maximize those lower brackets. Now, we do have to worry about the Social Security tax torpedo capital gains, as I mentioned. So maybe it's more than 12%, even if you're into 12%. That's a very important concept to understand if that's a new scenario for you. And basically what I'm saying is don't look at the tax brackets when making these decisions. You have to understand how all taxes in retirement, all penalties and extra premiums in Medicare, all these things, how do they play together to determine your all-in tax rate for that next $1,000 or that next $10,000 that you take out. And so the reason why we tell people typically is, hey, let's look to maximize these lower brackets. I mean, think about it. If you're 62 or younger, if you go all the way up to the 24% bracket, you're able to do Roth conversions without having to force yourself to pay Medicare premiums yet. And then when you do get to 63, 64 and older, you now have more in Roth that when you take out from Roth, you don't have to pay taxes, which means that you're going to likely have lower Medicare premiums during that time. And that can save you some more in taxes moving forward. So that's a big reason to really consider that if you're 62 or younger. If you're 63 or older, it could still make sense to go up that high, but you do have to remember that you're going to be looking to pay some Medicare tiers. So we're going to be more particular about what decisions we make there. We may only go up to the first tier and try to maximize that for a long period of time. Or maybe we look to bump it up 1 or 2 tiers and know that we're going to be paying more in Medicare for a few years, but maybe that's going to cause our lifetime Medicare premiums to go down. So you just be aware of where you sit, where those Medicare tiers are, to ensure that you're not overpaying and being, going $1 over those limits and having to pay $1,000 more per spouse in some scenarios, just by reaching that first tier. And then, you could look to pay double or even triple Medicare costs as that time goes. And the last point to maximizing the 24% bracket is, think about it. What are tax rates going to be moving forward? So we know the One Big Beautiful Bill permanently kept taxes to where it is moving forward. And I'm going to tell you that I don't think that's very likely that tax rates are never going to change moving forward. Now they could, the tax code is written in pencil and, I don't have the pencil, so I don't know what's going to happen. And that's why with our clients, we always prepare for taxes to go down, up, or stay the same. But what I'm telling you is that tax diversification may be really important in this concept. And so if you've got all your assets right now in tax deferred, that may not be best. I mean, you probably don't have all your investments in the S&P 500 and hoping for the best there, right? I mean, during the last decade, that would have been a really bad place to have all your investments. We don't know what the future is going to hold. And so that's why we like to have the diversification from a tax standpoint, tax deferred, tax free, maybe some taxable as well, so that when we get to potentially higher tax rates, we'll pull from the Roth. If we have lower tax rates, let's just keep pulling from the IRAs like we're considering right now, of why this is such an advantageous time with the One Big Beautiful Bill, lowering tax rates for a longer period. This is something that we've done with a lot of clients over the last, 5+ years to, ensure that once, since the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, we've had lower taxes. And understand, if that tax rates were to sunset in 2026 to go back to what they were, then the 24% bracket would have turned into 28. But more importantly, let's say you were going to be in 22%. Well, that was going to turn into 25. So you would have already paid more taxes, even though you had a lower income. So that's why doing these Roth conversions can make a lot of sense during right now. And now if you have $3 million, $5 million, $10 million tax deferred, more of those larger IRA balances, then this Roth conversion going up to the 24% bracket may not even be enough in some cases. Some of our clients, we're looking to even go up into the 32. So it's not something we always want to do, but you have to understand. I mean, if you have $5 million and you see a 10% return in your investments, let's do 5% to make it more reasonable, you're going to have $250,000 of gain in that investment. That's a lot of money at a 5% return. If you get a 10%, then that's going to be a $500,000 gain. And so if you're going to go all the way up to the 24% bracket, you may be able to convert around, $425,000 if you're married filing jointly due to going up to the 24% bracket plus utilizing the standard deduction as well. You're not even likely to do, all of your gains in some cases. If the market goes up 20% and you see $1 million of gain, you're not even taking advantage of doing these Roth conversions. It's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse as time goes. So that's why we're trying to encourage people early in retirement. Let's make this swap so all the growth moving forward is tax-free. So there's some key considerations to think about. Again, understand your situation. We don't go to the 24% for all of our clients, but something to really encourage you to think about and challenge in maybe your limited beliefs to not go up that high is ultimately what I want to encourage people to do. The second mistake that we see people make is not converting while they're working because they think their income is higher and they think that they're just going to do this when they retire and that it's going to be enough. I've already touched on that in the last point that, hey, you may not be able to make enough of an impact if you wait until you retire. It may be too late at that point to really make a massive difference in your plan. Now, it's never too late, but understand that you're going to miss opportunities is ultimately the idea. And again, remember, 24% bracket goes up to about $425,000. If you're married, about half of that. If you're single, unless you're making that amount of money, it may, if you're making $200,000 a year, you still got a generous amount of room to convert each and every year moving forward. And so you don't want to miss the opportunities with the lower tax rates, but also people watching this channel, you have a pension. And so if you have a pension, typically that's going to account for maybe 50, 60, 70, 80% of your income in retirement. So you're probably never going to be in a lower tax bracket when you combine that with your Social Security plus those RMDs that we talked about earlier. And so you have to understand the time and place of where's your situation going to be at in the future, right? Run your numbers, see what that looks like. But I can tell you for a lot of our clients, those in the 2% club, pension million plus, we are looking to do Roth conversions while they're working in most cases, unless it's maybe a one-off where their income is really high, maybe their assets are not as high. And so those are all considerations to be aware of. The third mistake we see people make, and I just mentioned this one, but it's thinking it's too late. It's never too late. Again, you may have missed opportunities, but you can't go back and change the time, but there is opportunities moving forward. And so you don't want to just think, man, I missed them, so I'll just not do it anymore. I mean, if you don't care about maximizing your situation, then I guess you can. But for those who are serious, which is most people watching this channel, they want to find all those little opportunities to ensure that what they work so hard for is going to get maximized. And so for those people, we would tell you, it's never too late to get the tax-free growth moving forward. But also this becomes important if you're going to leave money behind to your spouse or even your kids, which we'll also talk about in this video. But if your children are in a higher tax bracket, then even if you're 80 years old, a Roth conversion could make sense to do it at a lower rate than what it could be for them, knowing they have to now take it out over a 10-year period. So we never seen it be too late. Most of our clients are in that 50s to 60s space. So that's really an ideal time to look at Roth conversions. But for even those that are older, maybe your parents are older and you're wondering, should this be done or not? For your parents, it may make a lot of sense to do Roth conversions, especially they may not have pensions. They may be in the standard deduction or lower brackets. You could look to do Roth conversions with them so that when you inherit that money, you're not going to have to take those accounts out. Again, you have to take it out over 10 years on top of your pension, RMDs yourself, on top of your Social Security. That's going to be a really large tax burden that you're going to have to pay in the future. So again, understand how it all works together there. And also when you think about it, it's too late. I'd actually tell you it's probably not, right? Because if you did, tax deferred investments back in 1981 as an example, tax rates were really high at that point. And so if you deferred at a really high tax rate and now you're looking to pay it now with a Roth conversion on a lower tax rate, then you won. It's all about the total tax that you're going to pay on these decisions. It's not a matter of, if I convert it now, then I'm not going to have as much growth moving forward. No, it's more about the tax rate than it is about the growth. I think that's another misconception that a lot of people have over time, and I'm happy to talk about that one further if that's a limiting belief for anyone on this video, and if anyone is, and put in the comments and I can do a video on that. But it's not about your growth rate over time, because if you had your tax deferred versus a Roth account, if you got a 10% growth rate in either one, right, if you invested it the same way, then it's all about when you pay your taxes at what rate. So there's a lot of math behind that, but just understand it's never too late to necessarily do a Roth conversion. It's more about your situation. Another Roth conversion mistake we see these crowd make is thinking they can't do it because of what's called the 5-year rule. They're worried about, hey, if I do a Roth conversion, I don't have a Roth yet. I'm going to have to wait 5 years before I take the money out. And I don't want to do that. Well, that's typically not the case. So if you're 59 and a half or older, if you do a Roth conversion, you can take out that conversion amount at any time without any penalty. The only thing you can't touch is if there's any earnings there. You have to wait 5 years on only the earnings, but the conversion comes out first. And so I did another video on this 5-year rule concept that a lot of people don't understand. But for most people, this is not going to be a concern. But also, we're not typically looking to take from the Roth a significant amount during the first 5 years, right? We're expecting tax rates to be lower the next 5 years. We're going to look to take out of our IRAs or non-qualified accounts and look for this growth in the tax-free to happen over time, to use it when tax rates are higher, when that would be more advantageous, or to leave it behind to our spouse or our children due to the tax impacts of that. And also understand with a Roth contribution even, hey, I'm not 59 and a half yet, but I can still contribute $5,000 to a Roth IRA today, and I can take all of that $5,000 out tomorrow without penalty, without tax. So a lot of people miss that opportunity. So don't let that be, again, something you miss to take advantage of this type of opportunity right now. And the fifth Roth conversion mistake we see people not considering, and I've mentioned this a couple times already, but it's preparing for the widow's penalty. So if you're married filing jointly, this is extremely important to plan for. If you're single, you have to understand that your situation likely will not get better, and so that's why this planning becomes even more important for you. But the widow's penalty is when tax rates go from married filing jointly tax brackets to single tax brackets. This can cause you to have a loss of income because one of the Social Securities typically goes away, but also you have an increased tax burden because you now have to pay nearly double the amount of taxes from going from those brackets, and also standard deduction getting cut as well. And so this is something that if you just simply look to do Roth conversions now at married filing jointly rates, could be, again, advantageous. Back to point number one, if we take advantage of 24% brackets now, that may make sense knowing that you could potentially be in the 32% if you're single because of those RMDs, pensions, Social Security, all playing on top of each other. As your investments grow over time, that's going to cause you to have to take out more from your RMDs. And just to do a quick math, if you have $3 million in your IRA today, then, if you're 60, there's a good chance by the time you're 75, if you're not taking large withdrawals, which a lot of our clients don't need large withdrawals from their investments because they have pensions, that $3 million could turn into $6 million by the time you're 75. 4% of $6 million, that's $240,000 required minimum distribution just in year one. And if your investments keep growing, and as we know, that 4% that you're required to take out increases, it could go up to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9% over time. You're likely going to have to take out more than that as time goes. And so that, on top of your pension, on top of Social Security, will likely put you in those much higher brackets, especially if you're single. And so this is a very strong thing to plan for, especially if one spouse is in lesser health, or maybe one spouse is expected to live longer than the others. We know that females are typically live longer than males due to stats. And so we ultimately see this type of planning really important in those cases there that people want to plan for. So that's the biggest things to concern. Those are the 5 mistakes that people make. I'd say the most important 5. There's many others, but those are the 5 most important items to look at there. And if you are looking for more information on tax planning, you're in the right spot. We do so much tax planning for those with pensions, million plus save. That's what all of our content is about. So we would encourage you to subscribe to our channel so that you can get reminders of these videos. Or if you'd really like to learn more, feel free to request my book, I Hate Taxes. I break down a lot of these mistakes, a lot more detailed, a lot more easier to understand. I wrote it at a 4th grade level, but I've never had someone tell me that it was too advanced or too simple to read. And also, I've never had someone tell me they didn't get something out of it. So if you want to request that, if you've been watching this long, if you've been an avid viewer, go ahead and request that. The only thing we ask if you do request that is just make sure you're subscribed, make sure you are liking our videos so that we can reach more people with our content. But if that's you, we'd love to send that out to you. So if you go to the description in the video here below, or if you click on the link that our team will pop up here, then you'll be able to click on that to be able to request that content, to be able to learn more about this scenario so that you can put yourself in the best scenario moving forward. And so that's all I've got in today's episode of Joe Knows Retirement, and we'll catch you on the next one.